Hi, we're Latin Valley Studios. This is our update video for November 1st,
2021. There's no package today, once again.
We have not recorded much over the last couple of months.
Yeah.
We'll be doing more in the next month because we're now at a point where these novels are completed enough, like the Treasure Tale stories, that there are chunks where now it's a matter of us sitting down and going over them. So that's usually the stuff that we record, is when we sit down together and we go over stuff. And we're actually at that phase again, where we now can take chunks of the stories and sit down and go over them. So we'll record those.
Why are we at that phase again?
We're doing the whole novel process where I'm writing the novels of the Treasure Tales before we actually do the Treasure Tales. So we actually just have the content in high detail and whatever before trying to do the big thing that we were planning initially, and that whole process. So 3 of the novels are very close to finished. By the end of November, all 3 of them will be like really close to kind of just needing a few revisions passes to finish. But to do that, it makes way more sense to go over stuff when they're not quite finished, because that then when I'm actually finishing them, they're good when I'm finishing them. Otherwise, I'll finish them and then we'll go over them and be like, all this needs to change because it could be way better than whatever I did.
And then you just got to rewrite it, because there's no way to really take something and mesh it in with something that's already like fully finished. A good example is I was watching an illustrator and he's like, okay, we're about 20 hours in and we're at the stage where now we're pretty much good to go, and it's just going to take another 20 hours of rendering to finish the thing. And it's like, well, that's, if you take that extra 20 hours, you're not going to come, it's going to be too late, right?
So before I enter that second 20-hour phase and need to just redo a bunch of the stuff that I've already rendered in a way in writing, we're going to sit down and try and make sure that the rendering that I do is actually going to be in the stories and actually good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And come January, we still have a month before then, but we're going to be adding more worlds. And so we're going to begin the process of what's essentially always going to be the case from here on, is that there's going to be stories that are closer to done that just need like editing, and then stories that are in a stage where there's a scene that's not quite put together, and so it takes that's the point where it's like, oh, it's been 20 hours to then utilize that point and establish what we would actually want to have.
And stories that are like the new worlds that we'll just be introducing are going to be the kind of bare bones thing that we usually do throughout the year,
which will be in January.
So we'll have like 3 books of those 8 that we've done. Like, over the last 2 years we've covered 8 total Treasure Tales, and we've fleshed each of those worlds out to a decent degree, and 3 of those are now in almost novel form. Hopefully by January I'll have a full draft of each, and now we just look over and edit and revise those while I write the other 5 over the course of the year, while we're introducing another 4 worlds over the course of the year, and it'll just balloon and keep flooding in that way as this perpetual thing. So yeah, our system is just more, it's become very streamlined, and you can almost say like product oriented, where we're, instead of figuring out all the things that we need to do so that we can do it, we now know what to do. And now I'm just trying to do it as much and as fast and as efficiently as I can. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to figure out what is the most efficient way. Things like how refined, how much rendering should I do before we just take a thing and be like, let's tackle this before we start rendering it too much, and the different phases of it. So.
And for me, it's been like kind of taking a step back to do my own sort of fantasy art, and then he's taken on the writing of the stories, and it's been good in a sense that for him to like do 3 novels and kind of bring them to almost finished state or wherever they are, in the sense of just getting a sense of like what would he create on his own and what the voice is and kind of thing. And then I'm working on like my own voice on the thing, and then it's going to merge eventually in terms of illustration and writing. But then there's also the value that if I can get more involved with the actual writing while it's happening, then
the stuff turns out better.
That's the dynamic we've always had, is, you know, a combination of making these things. So
which is both like it makes the product better, like the thing that we're trying to do, but it's also it's our way of life, and it helps us like live better and understand what we're doing. So the more that we can just kind of exist in this field of Lantern Valley stuff as it's growing and developing, the better. And it's just tricky to do that when we're trying to do things. And like we don't have a finished book yet. I don't even know what it would like. Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing. I have yet to actually finish writing a novel, and we've yet to edit and revise it up to a point where it is done.
And I have yet to really get in the mode of finishing original fantasy stuff, which essentially Lantern Valley is all fantasy. So to finish, you know, just to be in that zone is like essentially for me what I would do if Lantern Valley was done, or if I was in the world of Lantern Valley. And so it's coming into that state in the same way.
We came up with a funny analogy of I'm like making all these Lantern Valley worlds right now, and he's learning to live as a character, as a Lantern Valley character, which is one of these characters in these worlds, which is, it plays perfectly into how the what you just mentioned of I'm writing these things and it's like my vision or voice or whatever.
Yeah.
And like Lantern Valley always gets so much better when there's not just me, but the bridge, like the other element to it of, you know, it's a communal thing, like it's a way of life or whatever, and one person existing is not a way of life. People, like relationships and the way things unfold or whatever, like the exploration of it together with other parts of like everything is way of life. Like then you can finally define it that way. And what we're trying to do is make things that are really encapsulating a way of life. So yeah, the more we can do that, the better. But finding the efficient path seems to be I hammer stories as fast as possible and just like flesh them out as much as I can to a certain point, and then we jump in together and be like, all right, I've been living as a Lantern Valley character.
Yeah.
Hopping in and be
doing
like,
what you do, and now I've been like, okay, I gotta do what I gotta do, and it all lines up.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a scene in mind for what we're gonna work on over the next, who knows how long. I just have to get that ready, and then it'll be like the chunk of a story that we can work on together and see how things work, because we don't know how things work yet.
And that'll be in the behind the scenes that you'll get access to next month.
Yeah, the stuff we'll actually be recording again.
Yeah. And if the audio's terrible, if you hear a bunch of bumps and bruises and stuff in the audio, well, it's because we're living in a...
It's Halloween, and there's a dog.
There's
a person comes by, it's barking, and
there's a bunch of activity happening
around
us that we can't do anything about. So
yeah, this will be up November 1st. We're recording in October 31st. You know what day that is? Costume day. Yeah.
All right.
See you.
See you next month.